So we're gonna look at a few techniques that only advanced hypertrophy trainers know, or at least people who do their due diligence, that do their research in this kind of stuff. Even if you're not like a super advanced lifter, I'm not a super advanced lifter with like 10 years plus, right? But if you care about hypertrophy training and actually doing the right things, these are a few things that you might want to think about when doing your sets to get the best performance possible. First thing we're gonna be looking at here is pacing. So a lot of people, when they do their sets, and this is kind of like, you know, sort of a really common thing you see, is they do movements and they'll hold the lockout here and then go like super slow on the way down, and then they'll pause and they'll like hold the lockout, and what ends up happening is you're not actually executing the movement properly and working the muscle in a full range of motion where like the mid position where the muscle's really strong is getting tapped out. You're just kind of burning yourself. So if you do chest presses like this where you're holding it with the tris up here, you're locking out, you're putting all the pressure on your side delts, your front delts, your triceps, and it's just not as effective. So the main thing you really should be thinking about when doing these kinds of movements is almost like a 2-2 kind of pacing. So like going with a pretty aggressive concentric, so maybe like 1 or 2 seconds, as up as you can, as fast as you can, and then coming down maybe 2 or so seconds, and then forcing it back up, never exaggerating excessively any part of the movement. So you guys will see on my working set here, I'll do like a warm-up rep so you can see. When I do my set here, this is the way it really should look for most of your chest work. So you'll see I'm doing some upper chest here. I'm using the front delt machine, but it is upper chest. And you'll notice that when I'm here and I'm actually deliberately performing a rep, I come up and then down, and then up and then down. And that kind of pacing for most things is really gonna work. There are exceptions, like say a tricep pushdown, where you're trying to really work the medial and lateral head, holding that lockout or getting close to that lockout and really putting a lot of love at the lockout might be worth it for triceps, but for incline chest like this, it's just not necessary. So what we're gonna do our working weight here. I'm gonna do about 245. I'm gonna look at what I did last time. Last time I was here, I performed this exact same workout. I did 240 for 6. So realistically, I'll probably get 245 maybe for 5, or I could do the 240 for 7 route, kind of depends. What I think we'll do is we'll probably do 240 for 7. That seems a little better. So I'm gonna scooch pretty far forward, getting a nice tuck for the upper chest, and focus on my pacing. Look at how I actually pace these reps. Remember, you can't be too deliberate, because if you're being that deliberate, you're not actually going as hard. You're not actually training with as much intensity. So here we go, our working set here, one and only working set. Okay. So unfortunately we only had 6, but that's 6 reps at 0 reps in reserve. And you notice the pacing there was just that perfect middle ground between intensity and technique. The next technique you want to think about is range of motion. So a lot of people are sort of gaslit into thinking that full range of motion on everything is the best thing to do, and that's not always the case. So using a full range of motion is beneficial, because if you do get full ROM on most things, you're going to be exposing your joints, your tendons, connective tissue to the full movement and load. So that is very useful from an overall health and injury mitigation standpoint. However, with certain exercises, certain muscles have more leverage or more responsible for producing force in different parts of the motion. And there are certain exercises where doing certain things and using certain ranges of motion is simply not necessary, and a lot of times counterproductive. So for example, if we're looking at a chest press like this, and say I'm doing a pretty hard rep here, and I just camp out at the top like this, as I mentioned, you're just burning a lot of steam, because that's mostly mostly triceps and front delt. So when doing a movement like this, it's good to know where the muscle has leverage. So for example, with the chest, it's more like that mid to lengthen range where the chest is really working. So that's where the chest is producing a lot of force and is actually completing the movement. And then base your exercises selections around that. So chest flies are good for tapping out the shorten range while taking the front delt and the triceps out of the equation. And then something like a press like this is very good for that mid to lengthen range when executed properly. And you'll see how I pace this out here and how I sort of work in that range of motion. So we got this at 245 for 5 last time. And take a look at where I'm putting the emphasis. We're not over-exaggerating the stretch, because it's just not necessary, and that will make a higher inroad in our recovery. So here we go, sitting back, 245, and here we go. That's it, chest is tapped out. So another advanced hypertrophy technique to sort of think about is reps in reserve, how to actually plan your lifts around your reps in reserve. Now, something to think about is you have 5 reps, at least we think, you have 5 reps that are gonna be conducive to growth. They're called the 5 effective reps, that's the theory right now. And with these 5 effective reps, you could say your 5 reps closest to failure are each generating a 20% stimulus, roughly. So if you're doing a set of 10, the first 5 reps are gonna be essentially useless towards your growth or very insignificant towards your growth. And the remaining 5, especially the 5 closer to failure, are gonna be the most important for growth. The problem is that the rep right before failure, so like your last rep of a 10 rep set, is gonna be the most fatiguing. It's gonna generate the most fatigue. The velocity of the rep, the concentric velocity, is gonna be slower. So because of that fatigue that you're creating, a lot of times it's nice to stop with 1 rep in the tank. So a great way to do this to really filter out that junk volume is to do sets of 4. 4 reps with 1 rep in reserve. So for example, if my true failure point here was 5 on this preacher curl, if I'm doing this, I'm on rep 1, on rep 2, and then it's starting to get really hard. So rep 3, and then rep 4, as I come up, it's gonna go really slow, and then I'm gonna stop and say, okay, I have 1 rep left in the tank. I got 80% of the potential growth stimulus, roughly, on this set, but I spared myself the very, very fatiguing last rep. So this isn't something I would do on all my lifts. You don't always have to do this, but it's a nice way to progress. And a lot of times when I plan my routines, I like to do, say, a set here. I'll do a set here for 7 reps with 1 rep in reserve. Then on my second set, I might do 7 reps again, but this time, because of the central nervous system fatigue I've accrued, it's gonna be 0 reps in reserve. So I like to match the reps sometimes, first set being 1 RIR, second set being 0 RIR, and you really can't go wrong.